Welcome to the Love Pod, where inspiration, vision, and real connection come alive. Wherever you are, you belong here. Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Love Pod, everyone. I am your host, Julia, and I've been pretty eager for today's conversation for months, I would say. And our guest is Anita Stewart, and she is a special person who I met during a time where I was becoming a whole new person, with a little addition to my world shortly after our daughter Luciana was born. We were living on Vancouver Island at the time, and I was a new mama, excited, overwhelmed, and honestly, a little bit lonely. And I had joined a mamas group online. I reached out for some support, and Anita was one of the mamas who didn't just respond with words, but actually showed up. She offered to come over, bring over some food, and be there in person. And I'll never forget that. She came with her daughter, Matilda, who I think was 3 or maybe 4 at the time. And from the moment we met, there was just this instant connection. We shared many similar ideas around motherhood and what it really means to be a conscious parent, and we got to know each other more. We introduced our husbands, who became good friends. We got together for dinners and community gatherings, and even though we moved back to Ontario now, we still kept in touch. And so since then, Anita has welcomed her second child and is continuing the beautiful work that she does with families. She's in the process of editing and finalizing a book that she wrote, which will explore some of its ideas today. Anita, you hold a PhD in psychology and are the founder of Growing Up Connected. And your work bridges trauma healing, conscious parenting, and spirituality, helping families to reconnect to themselves and raise children who, feel truly seen, safe, and free. Yeah, I'm so happy that we finally made this happen. Welcome to the Love Pod.
Thanks so much. I'm also very excited to finally get to chat with you some more about these ideas.
Likewise, I would love to just, I would love to invite you to introduce yourself a little bit further and maybe share a bit about, the journey that led you to doing the work that you do today.
For sure. So yeah, I was doing a PhD in psychology at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. Actually studying something completely unrelated, economic inequality or perceptions of economic inequality. And then I got pregnant with our first child. And I knew always that I wanted to be parent differently from my own parents. And I got really interested in what do children actually need to thrive. And I dove into the literature, especially from an evolutionary perspective, because a lot of the issues, or actually all of the issues that we see in today's world with children, like that they have trouble sleeping, that they have constant meltdowns, that they don't want to share, that they're whiny, that they're clingy, even that they're like wiggly, like all these things that we see are non-existent or unheard of in hunter-gatherers and have always been and still are in more traditional societies. And so that suggests that it's not something inherent in child nature or some developmental stages that just all children go through, but that there must be something in our environment that causes it. And I would say I had a pretty good understanding of what children need by the letter. And then when my daughter was born, I followed that. So we always slept together. We always held her. I never raised my voice. I was always very compassionate or like understanding. Um, but we still saw a lot of the issues that parents see. Like she was still getting easily upset. She had a hard time falling asleep. There was lots of things going on. And then I had to come to grips with the fact that actually it's not just the letter, it's also the spirit that matters. And even though I not once have yelled at her, my inner state was such that I might have as well yelled at her. So what I came to realize is that it's not just what we do, but what matters actually much more is the energy that we bring. And do we come from love or do we come from fear? Those are the only two energies that we can actually come from. And so I had to, well, wake up to really realize like my own trauma and my own fears and my own closed-heartedness that I had a lot of the time, and even perceiving it as such. And it took me about, I think, 5 years to really do this deep dive of working through all these things and coming to grips with how I was constantly breaking her heart by closing myself out and withdrawing in various ways, and doing the same to my partner too. Um, yeah, and then more recently, I've like maybe I don't know, year and a half ago or so, I've also awoken more to the spiritual aspect of being, which I was completely shut off before, and understanding well, that we're all truly one, yeah, there's just one divine consciousness, and that everything happens for a reason, and that our children really are the ones that reflect everything the most that we experience. I mean, everything reflected equally, but we get the most in touch. Like they touch our deepest wounds, and so bring them out the most. And so yeah, it's been quite the journey, and. Um, Now I really love to just spread the importance of love and see how that can truly transform families, and that the way that we live and this narrative that we have in general, that it's just normal to be overwhelmed as parents, that days is just difficult, that we feel touched out, or I don't know, like just like, oh, I was on the whole day, and so I need some time to myself, that's just a trauma dream that we all live in, and that's because we are not centered, grounded in our hearts ourselves, and so everything
Mm.
else becomes stressful, and we can completely free ourselves and live basically on in heaven on earth as we're living, and have fun as a family.
Mm. So beautiful. Oh my goodness. I love all of that. And I really see your passion and I hear you. And it reminds me of the first time you came to my house and we were diving into these deep conversations. And, it's to me, it's exciting. Like it's a chapter of people's lives that probably scares a lot of them because they're like, I have no idea how to be a mom or a parent, or this is not something that they learn growing up or going to school. So it's exciting, but at the same time, it's unknown territory. And even look at yourself, you did all this deep dive before becoming a mama, but then still you were going through your own personal challenges. And, what I think is so beautiful about these experiences that we choose to have in this lifetime, if you choose to be a parent, it's such a blessing and an opportunity because even though, like you say, these relationships will, pick at your deepest wounds, it's all by design and it's all meant to help us awaken. And so what's really exciting is that if we choose to go deeper into those wounds, we realize that they're wanting to come up to be looked at and to be free because they've been in the shadows for so long. And then we have these little beings come into our world who are like, hey, mama, I'm going to help you heal this part of yourself. And it can be scary, right? Especially if we have no idea like what's going on or we're not really understanding like why there's such a big challenge, in our life concerning our little one. But, on a spiritual level, it's like it's all happening for us. And I mean, if I think of one word that could describe parenthood, it's all consuming. It can be overwhelming, but I totally agree with you, when you talk about the myth of like um it can be challenging to not have time for yourself or to do it all. And it's like, if we are grounded and like you say, heart centered, it doesn't need to be like we can be, with our little ones all the time, even if we're homeschooling them and we're with them and still feel that joy and still feel that time for ourselves because we are grounded and our cups are full. I feel like a lot of the time people have this idea of like it's so much when I'm with them. And so when they go to school or they go to daycare, like I have my time for me and I get to go to work. And, some people have the belief that that's the only way it can be. But I think what's most important as a parent is to embody and show our children by example, And so what I'm learning the most, on my own motherhood journey, Anita, is really raising up my little girl, my inner child, like never before. Like parenting is really asking us to step up, be responsible for our actions in all parts of us, and really to take care of the parts that need healing. And sometimes we need guided, help through that because it's not always easy to do it alone. I don't think we're meant to do it alone. But I would love to ask you because, I think when a lot of people listen to this and they hear, you never yelled at your daughter, how could you not yell? Because so many people are just maybe reactive or they've, had enough or hits their last straw when their children are acting a certain way. But you said energetically something else was going on in the inside because, your daughter was being your mirror and acting in a certain way. So I just wanted to ask, like, what did you do? What were some tools you used to like observe that and look at that and shift it?
Mhm. Okay, well, first of all, I think I want to say the one of the most detrimental things we do is and I have done that, drowning in shame and guilt. So every time we do something like either we turn away from it and say, "Well, that's okay. Everyone is doing that," and so that's just normal. Like for example, yelling. Everyone yells, so that's just how it is. And as long as we repair it, doesn't have any negative consequences. Or if it does, like I grew up that way and I'm fine or whatever. Or we're like, I'm traumatizing my child. How could I do that? And don't forgive ourselves. And both of these are futile avenues. Like if we yell or anything else that we do that hurts our children, I think both from a spiritual and from a trauma perspective, that makes perfect sense. So any struggle any person ever has makes perfect sense given their particular history, and anyone else in their shoes would act in exactly the same way. So if someone yells, there's nothing wrong with them. It makes only sense. But it's not natural in the sense that we are born this way and meant to yell or
Hmm.
do anything else. From a spiritual perspective, too, our souls come here to learn something. And I think we live in an age, or we are at the stage where the one thing that we're meant to learn is to really live from the heart, move from the solar plexus to the heart chakra, like from an ego-based living to a heart-centered living. And that means that we learn to, as Ram Dass has said, his teacher has taught him, to speak the truth and love everybody. Like
Hmm.
to love everybody doesn't necessarily mean that we have to really like everybody and want to be friends with them, or that we accept like or condone everything that they do, but we love them because they are just an expression of the divine. They're just like they are us. We are them. We're all one, and we see that everything is perfect exactly as it is, and we accept everyone exactly where they are. That doesn't mean
Yeah.
we deem it good what they are doing, but when we see it from our heart and we have an understanding, both from a trauma perspective and from a spiritual perspective. I never yelled because my parents yelled at me and I hated it so much. So I swore to myself I will never do that. But I carried the same energy, so it's not better. I was like innerly I was screaming, and so it's not to pat myself on the shoulders and say, yeah, like for a long time I was like, well, I'm such a good parent. I'm not yelling, but that's not true because I was still passing on my trauma. Just in ways that I was more oblivious to, or was easier for my ego to say, I'm not doing that, what other parents are doing. But I was ultimately doing the same thing. And honestly, for a long time, I didn't want to see it. I was doing everything to avoid looking at how I was affecting my daughter. And my husband really forced me to see it because
Hmm.
my husband has actually been one of those rare people that has always actually been in his heart and has seen the truth and has seen how I have closed my heart. And when we met, we met in a place so I'm from Germany and I was in Vancouver for just a few months and we met and we had a casual relationship. And I was just in a completely open-hearted, free-spirited space. I was the person that I authentically am. And then we fell in love and we said, well, we can't just not be together. And then he moved to Berlin with me and we lived there for a while. And then I went back to my normal life and I just shut down my heart. And from that point on, he tried to get us back to the place where we were in love. And so once we had children, that was more important to him because he could see how I was hurting our daughter with my closed-heartedness. And it's like, maybe that sounds a little bit abstract because it's like, what does that really mean? To be close-hearted. It's like I said, I never yelled. I tried to follow all the gentle parenting advice, like validating emotions, holding her when she's upset, not leaving her. We didn't send her to daycare. I'm not saying that that is wrong if people do that. There's ways to do that that are not necessarily traumatizing to children. I'm just saying we've tried as much as possible to follow all these ideas. But what really matters is not so much what we do, but the energy that we bring when we do it. And there's only two energies, like I said, like love or fear. And love is basically everyone knows how they feel. When we feel loving, when we come from a loving energy, it feels connecting, unifying, we feel open, we feel expansive. Nothing anyone could ever say would make us shut down. Like we're not defensive. If anyone says anything negative towards us, we're completely open to just hearing it. We have no need to defend ourselves. There's nothing to defend. And when we come from a state of fear, where like we feel constricted or restricted, it's anything that is separating or disconnecting. The other person becomes our enemy. And so it's sometimes hard. When I started on this journey, I would have found it really hard to even identify those different energies, even though it's so obvious to me now. Or when you learn to be like more in your heart, it's easier to see that. But the ego doesn't want you to see it. So when we're in a
Right.
defensive state, we also convince ourselves, no, I'm open. You can tell me what you want to say. But fuck you. You're wrong. And also, you have done these and these and these things, and that's only why I'm shutting down. But when we come from the heart, it's actually completely irrelevant what the other person is doing, because that's their story, and they may be acting in hurtful ways or unkind ways or attacking us. So they may also not be in their heart. But that's not a reason for us to then leave our heart and also become
Right.
defensive. So it's that, and that's the energy that I had with my husband and also with my daughter and also with the world more broadly. But with those two, it had the most consequences for them and for myself and for our family. So it's like this constant energetic shutdown. So waking up and thinking and dreading the day, like going through my to-do list of these stressful things that I have to do. Oh, we have to we have a meeting there, and oh, that'll be such a hard thing to get out of the house, or we gotta do groceries, or we have to prepare this, like mundane everyday things. But having this negative thing, or my daughter's crying about something, and then having this inner dread of like just desperation,
Hmm.
wanting that to go away, and then acting outwardly kindly and taking her in my arm, but this like just inner turning away, not accepting the moment exactly as it is. So that's basically closing our hearts to the moment. And that is what has all these negative consequences.
So would you say your heart is more open now? And what do you think was the turning point for you that helped you to open it back up?
Yeah, so that gets me back to what you asked before too. So like I think I've woken up to this fact hundreds of thousands of times, and my husband really got me to see it many times. Um, and then I would always forget again and go back into my trauma dream, fall asleep, feel like a victim
Hmm.
of my circumstances. Um, and I have consistently, we've made it a priority of our life so much that we've basically neglected everything else. And not everyone necessarily has to do that. But to us, that was like just the number one goal to get out of this state. For us, it was also really bad. Like before I answer your question, just to explain one thing. Um, Children feel everything that we feel. Babies feel absolutely everything. The slightest energetic shift that we may be completely oblivious of, they feel. So we can be in this generally open state, and then we have just one tiny negative thought or like one little judgment about somebody. And that's like the energy turns, like we lower our vibration and it becomes a little more negative. And children pick up on that, and babies pick up on that. Now, when parents are consistently closed-hearted and in a negative energy state, it's extremely, excruciatingly painful for children. It hurts in their heart,
Hmm.
and they have no choice other than closing their heart too and dissociating from their pain. And that's what I mean. In my view, all of us, almost all of us, have gone through as children, and then same can be said about our parents when they were children. And from generation to generation, by and large, not in every individual case, but for the most part, we have begun to open our hearts more. Like the things that we talk, like the quality of our conversations now compared to 30 years ago, have shifted a lot. You know, like it used
Hmm.
to be cool to bully children in school by other kids, you know, like that's not cool anymore. So there's all these shifts, or like gossiping. I know And my parents and their friends used to like just gossip about people, and now I don't do that with my circle of friends, and I find it pretty appalling. Like, and
Yeah.
I used to enjoy it much more than like in the past. I also liked to gossip about people because it made me feel better, and now it makes me feel gross. And so I think we have this general shift, and we're more open-hearted with our children generally. Um, but because we're not completely open-hearted, they still feel a lot of pain. But they don't dissociate as much as previous generations have, or as children do that are, for example, regularly beaten or heavily abused, or like that are just treated with more closed-heartedness. And because of that, we see more of these struggles today from children where they constantly whine or are clingy that we don't see when we're just harsher, where we just force children to dissociate more. I kind of lose my train of thought now why I said that. I want to get back to um, what has shifted. Yeah, right. Because of that, because I have done this extreme yo-yo effect with my daughter, where I've sometimes been completely open-hearted and warm and engaged, and then I would shut down. And again, I wouldn't be outwardly aggressive, but inwardly, like inwardly, like my energy was a negative one, and so it was that much more painful to her than it would be to a child that has never known this high of extreme open-hearted love. Like when I was a child, I didn't experience it that high. So I had shut myself off more from it, so I wouldn't feel when it went further lower, I wouldn't feel it as much because
Mm.
my pain was shut off to some extent. And so the more we worked on things, the more smaller insults for me became painful for her, which is also one of the pitfalls of this whole awakening journey. Then it seems like it's never ending or it isn't changing, but at some point we actually make the shift. So I've woken up many, many times and just went back to sleep. And I've worked through things and just had to be willing, and I often wasn't, but like from moment to moment to just see the truth of my actions, like see that my actions have consequences without guilt or learning to forgive myself and be okay with that, and that my worth as a person and any soul that has nothing to do with what we do or what we don't do. We can't earn love and we can't lose love, and to like
Mm.
that's where the kind of spiritual perspective I think is helpful. Um, yeah, and then at some point I had this shift, which was fairly recent actually, from going through the same cycle over and over again. It was like an upward spiral where things are getting better and we could see that things are loosening up and I'm working through stuff. But then always there would be a trigger that would cause me to shut down again. To at some point, just had this realization. I can forever try to let go of fear and work through everything, or I can just in the moment choose to step into love and bring joy and just open my heart. And it's
Mm.
maybe like hard to, like, it would have been hard for me to understand that 4 years ago because I was not in touch with my heart and it would have been a fake thing that I would have done. So it has to be real. And I'm sure people could do it. You can just have an immediate instant awakening. And I think we are in an age or an era of awakening. And I think this will happen to more and more people. I think it's like the 4 minute mile, where at some point, it was considered impossible that anyone could run a mile under 4 minutes. And then someone did it, and then other people like, oh, if that person can do it, I can do it too. And now
Mm.
lots of people are doing it. And so I think the same is true of waking up or learning to live from our hearts, that more and more people are doing it. And so other people see it and will learn to do it too. And it's just, we all just have one energy. So we just
Mhm.
choose. Like it's not really a letting go of energy, it's a stepping into a higher vibration or choosing a higher vibration.
Yeah.
And there came a point
Mm.
where that was just, I can just do it. I'm just there. And now every trigger that I have, I see as a gift. It's like, oh, okay, there is something that I have not yet healed, and I can bring love to it and not this dread of, oh no, turning away. I don't want this to be true.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. But there takes a certain degree of awareness to be able to do that, right? And for a lot of people, it can be scary. And, when you talk about living from the heart, for me, that just totally means like being present with everything that is here and now and not trying to change any of it.
Yeah.
Whether you have a crying baby or a baby who won't sleep, or whether you're with your emotions that are coming up and that are not comfortable, it's just being with all of it and just allowing it to move through you, because that's what it's wanting to do is to move through you so that it can be released and be set free. And I think the biggest service that we can do to our children is really owning our stuff, not trying to project it unconsciously onto anyone, but just owning it and realizing that like it's okay. Whatever's coming
Yeah.
up for us or whatever we're feeling, like it's all okay. We don't need to victimize ourselves or judge ourselves or blame or shame anybody, but just knowing, like you said, like everything that's happening to us is for our growth. And it's an exciting time. Like we didn't come here to live just these like perfect lives or be happy all the time. Like this is the true human 3D experience. And so we came here to feel all the feels. And what I think is so exciting is when we go through these like really deep transformative personal journeys, we tend to be compassionate about helping others walk through the same, portal, which is what you named your book, which I'm really excited to jump into as well. But, having gone through it, we have more compassion. And so we're inspired to help others because if we can do it, why can't they? And then like you say, it's that ripple effect of awakening. Like it's so interesting. I for the longest time questioned my purpose. I knew that I always wanted to do something that was meaningful. And like you, I've been in spiral of thoughts of waking up and just like dreading my day. And even though I had a good life, I've always had a good life. Like I always thought there was something more. And I thought when I thought of my purpose, I thought of it always being out there somewhere that I needed to get to. But then I came to this realization that it's within me. It's always been within me. It's never left me. And it's really whatever I'm doing in every moment. Like the purpose is just being present as much as we can and connecting back to ourselves, to our hearts, because that's the only place that we can live, a life of love from love and remember the love that we are, from a spiritual perspective. But I also realize that part of my purpose is to focus on me and my life and the things that I can control. And then through my own awakening, that will inspire others. Then if I'm seeing someone doing something that I don't like, I don't need to go tell them it's bad for them. Me just embodying my truth and, they will feel inspired by that. And so what's really exciting is we have the power to change anything in our lives that we do not like. We are not victims, even if there's like the most challenging situation with our children and we have no idea what's going on. We've taken them to every doctor out there. We can heal whatever it is and it's for us, and we can go within and become our own doctors for ourselves, for our children, and realize that like this is for us and there's a root cause to it. And as much as we're willing to go into it, the answers will reveal themselves. Right. But it's also being with the discomfort of it and not trying to reject it or, like I think the first thing, first and foremost, is becoming aware and then accepting the situation. But, it can be hard for people because they maybe are not used to going within. And so, like, what advice could you offer a mama who's really wanting to understand on a deeper level, but has no idea where to start? We talk about relationships being mirrors, and maybe they understand, okay, my child's acting like this because I need to heal this part of me, but I don't know where to start. How do
Yeah.
I go within?
Yeah, it's tricky, and I mean I've tried to avoid it for a long time. Um, Yeah, I think a few things. I think what keeps us stuck in general and unwilling to look is shame and guilt. And shame and guilt have us believe, or it's a story that we tell ourselves, this is all my fault, and I'm a bad person for doing this. So if I'm the cause of my child's pain, or anything else that I might be doing in the world, then that makes me a bad person. That makes me unworthy of love. And
Mhm.
that is such a crushing feeling. And I believe that's what underlies all of our reluctance to see reality for all of us. That we have learned, actually, through the way we were parented, that we are not worthy of love unless dot 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 something.
Uh-huh.
We have to do something. And so our whole lives, and that's our whole ego's purpose, we desperately try to prove that we are worthy of love but because we don't believe it, nothing on the outside will ever convince us. It can be a temporary, I'm so great, I did this thing for a moment, and then we will instantly go back into, but that's not enough.
Mm.
And so as like I think we have to understand that shame and guilt will make us turn away, will make us not want to look at the things. And then the ironic thing is because we turn away from the harm that we create because we feel too ashamed and too guilty and too it feels too bad, we can't bring awareness to it, and so we inevitably have to create more of it, and we make it worse
Mm.
and worse. And then it becomes harder and harder to look at it because we've piled on like objectively things that have hurt other people.
Right.
So it's like helpful to see that shame and guilt are always wrong because, like I said before, there is a reason why we're acting the way we do, and our worth has nothing to do with anything that we do or don't do. And this is actually is also true of the person that commits the most horrific, horrendous acts that we might get outraged about. They deserve nothing but our love and compassion. That doesn't mean
Mhm.
that it's okay that they're acting the way they're doing. But they are also just a soul. They're just an expression of the creator, just like anyone else. And as long as we judge them, that means we're judging ourselves too. You cannot judge another person unless you're judging yourself. So I think for a mama or papa that is faced with these things, it's like, in my view, 100% of the time our child is struggling, it is caused by us. And that is really hard. Well, one thing hard to accept, and another thing maybe really hard to see. And it was for me also at some point really hard to see because I was so all over the place and constantly stressed and constantly injecting negative energy into my environment that it seemed like kind of unrelated often when my child would get upset because in that moment I wasn't upset. But as I've worked through things, I really see it's mind blowing. Like I can be in one room and completely blissful, and I have one negative thought or judgmental thought, and a moment later, one of my children will come running to me crying every single time, or they will trip and fall and hurt themselves. It's like
Mm.
this energetic, like this karma that I'm spreading around that is
Yeah.
happening. Or like when I've had situations where I've had like everything is great with my children, and then I see another parent doing something and have had judgment about that. And then a moment later, my daughter has a meltdown over something completely minor. It's like this just complete mirroring back. So anything we do is a cause that has an effect.
Yeah.
And that is particularly true of our children because from like now from an evolutionary perspective, and then also from a soul's perspective, we have a contract as souls. Our children choose us, and we chose them as children, and to learn something together. So there is a bond where something wants to be learned together and be resolved potentially. But also from an evolutionary perspective, our children are dependent on us to survive. They need us. They could not survive without us. And so what they take the cues from is not the things that we say or that we do, but our energy. Because that's much more that without a fail always is honest. We cannot lie. We cannot fake our energy. We can fake what we say and what we do, but not our true energy. And I mean anyone can think of that. It's like have you ever, when someone asks you how you're doing, said good or something when in reality you weren't good, right? Like it's so easy to just pretend something that isn't true. And for a child, so they feel our energy. And what could be more frightening than the person that you depend on to survive being frightened? Like that person essentially saying, I don't know if I can keep you alive. And that be a constant state of affairs all day long. Like with these things where we think it's not a big deal, but we feel like constantly overwhelmed or frustrated with a friend or our partner, or annoyed by work, or annoyed in traffic, or we're rushing from one thing to the next. Like we have this constant state of being of things are just not okay as they are. And that
Mhm.
it doesn't matter what the external circumstances are. They can be, like in my case, they were always, things were actually okay, objectively speaking. But it could also, objectively speaking, be really difficult. Um, and yet, if we know that we're the creator and that we are just creating our reality, then we could be perfectly okay. If we know that we can never actually die, our soul just lives on and goes through one life to the next to learn something,
Hmm.
even the most horrendous situation is okay ultimately. There's something that we can learn, and we can learn to come to it with love. So I
Yeah.
think as a parent, if we really want to change that, there's so many strategies and tools and scripts, and a lot of them, especially like in a gentle parenting realm, or like I use that as an umbrella term for many different ways of parenting, but where we basically care about children, like try to be loving in some form. A lot of these things work briefly, and the reason for that is that the parent is hopeful and thinks, "Yeah, I got this," and has a positive energy towards it. But because the root cause, which is always us, doesn't get addressed, because we still um, come to it from fear, it will always go back to the old patterns and always get worse again. So as long as we're not willing to look at ourselves, we cannot change that, and we will only ever be willing to look at ourselves um, when we're willing to let go of shame and guilt, or accept it, be willing to die into the shame and the guilt and say, okay, so what? I give up. Then I am a bad person. Now what am I going to do with that? Now can I look at all the things I've done,
Mm.
but with compassion and with love?
Yeah.
And when we do that, we, like you said, I think we all have the doctor, we all have the wisdom, we have everything within. I think we can reach out and use other tools. And I've done a ton of different things to wake up and to help myself. Um, but ultimately, we all have the tools within ourselves. We all have the same wisdom. We all have the same knowledge in our hearts. And any tool that we use is basically just a permission that we give ourselves, like our ego, that like, okay, this is the way where I can allow myself to see it. If I listen to this person, or if I do this meditation or psychedelics or whatever it might be, that helps me. So I think it's good to never get too attached to a tool. And now it's me. I'm doing it. I'm just
Mm.
using that tool to allow myself to see the truth.
Yeah. And when you go into that feeling of like, okay, I'm a bad person. Okay, I'm guilty of my child's upsets or what have you go into it, but then you realize like you don't need to label it. Like you set yourself free when you let go of the story that you're putting behind it. Because if you think of a little one, they're not labeling things yet. They're just so brand new and they're just experiencing life and they're just, they experience things, but it's just whatever they're going through, it's sensation. There's always, of course, the feeling of feeling good or bad, but it's like as we grow up, I feel like we have more of this dualistic mindset. Whereas children are just so free and open-hearted and just being with all the experiences that are coming their way. But also when you were speaking about the beliefs and like a lot of people have this core belief of, oh, I'm not enough or I'm not, worthy. Louise Hay talks about how this is probably one of the biggest underlying limiting and false beliefs that like probably all of us have had at one point or not in our lives. And it's really interesting because when you go into these beliefs and you start to actually question like what's going on up there. This is the beautiful thing about, starting to learn to go within and meditating. You start to kind of see, okay, you observe your thoughts, like what am I actually thinking up there and how did they get there in the first place? And then you actually can realize that a lot of them probably are not true or in alignment with what's actually true for you. And what's really beautiful is you get to realize that you have the power to change beliefs and actually choose ones that make you feel good. And what's exciting about that is when you start to choose, beliefs that are more in alignment with who you are and that make you feel good, your whole life changes. Your whole reality changes. Because in the first place, when you're thinking these beliefs of, oh, I'm not good enough, or, I'm a shitty person, or whatever it is, your life will attract experiences to validate that, right?
Hmm.
That's just the way this world works. You're going to be manifesting unconsciously. Obviously, you're not doing it consciously, but the universe is so giving. It's like if you're thinking this, then let me prove to you that this is the way it is, even though it's not in alignment with who you really are. That's the experience it's going to give you until you wake
Hmm.
up and realize that it could be another way, right? And that you're the conscious creator of your reality. You have the power to choose that. So what I love about all this that you're talking about is, the the children responding to our energy. I think it's so important for us to start tuning into how the things we're doing and the things we're saying make us feel in every moment. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really a self-observation game. And sometimes when we're just going through, the days of life, it's like it becomes sometimes, so autonomous, and we just like we're doing the dishes or we're bringing the kids to daycare or whatever it is. It like we forget to kind of be in our bodies and actually think like the things that we're engaging and putting our time into, how does it actually make us feel? Because I think the whole point is to start doing things more that make us feel good inside and light us up, right? Because the more that we can do that, the more our frequency and vibrations will rise, and then our children will respond in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's super important. And the ways that we can do this is, you can start journaling and start writing down some of the beliefs you notice that you're having, and asking if they're true. What would the opposite of that be, and how does that make you feel? And then something that I've started doing recently, Anita, is starting to write my morning routine, and the things that I'm doing in the morning. I will write not only what I'm doing, but how it makes me feel. And, I'm letting go of the judgment or anything of whether it makes me feel good or bad. I'm just simply writing and observing. And the reason I'm doing this is because I've been realizing, for me, like, the most important thing is to start my day off feeling good. And sometimes when I'm waking up at the same time of my daughter and not having even just 15 minutes to myself in the morning, I'm realizing that it's so important to fill my cup up first. And perhaps you experience this with your first child as well, but I've been really, I feel like, getting lost and consumed these past couple of years and just serving her. She's crying, I'm there. She's up in the middle of the night, I'm there. But then it comes to a certain point where I realize, oh yeah, like I still exist. I need to take care of me too. And if I don't, then who's going to take care of her? So it's really, for me, the biggest challenge has been finding that fine balance of taking care of me, but also being available to take care of my family. And so it's reminding me, like, okay, well, what are the things that I like to do before becoming a mom? And how can I make space and time to do that? Or how can I learn to do that in a new way and include my daughter? So it's really like a whole re-identification when you step
Mm-hmm.
into parenthood, and learning to include, your children in new and, adventurous ways, and it's creative ways, I mean to say. But yeah, can you relate to any of that?
Yeah, I can absolutely relate to a lot of that. Yeah, I used to feel the same way. And I think once you shift to actually live from your heart, like where it's not a practice to try to get into your heart or stay there, but you actually, that's just your default state, it shifts. Like you don't need any space from your daughter. You don't need to fill your cup,
Yeah,
because filling your cup means that it must have been empty. But if you just are in a place where you're just genuinely happy, like all the time, because you come from love, you see everything is love, everything is just an expression of divine consciousness, then how could you ever feel depleted? Like
yeah,
that's
beautifully
a
said.
ego, or like the old way of being that I believe as humanity we're shifting out of, or the earth, like as a race, the human race is shifting out of, and is waking up to this. And yeah, that's like a place where I think this idea, like you said earlier, that we are of course happy, but obviously we can't always be happy. I think when we live from the heart, we actually are always happy. We're always flourishing, because everything is just an opportunity.
Hmm.
Any trigger, any that doesn't mean that we don't have pain, but we don't resist the pain. We welcome it.
Yes,
And
yes.
so when we wake up, we of course we still, so the way I feel now, I used to feel like, oh, I just want to have some space for my children, or like I need to have something, or I feel like touched out, like do they have constantly have to be on me now? I honestly would be okay to spend every single second with my children. I love it. When I wake up, I don't need any time from them. It's nothing is more beautiful than waking up next to them, and they like smiling and laughing and being happy to be alive. Um, and I still enjoy being on my own or doing something with friends without them, because just the things that some of the things that I talk about, I wouldn't talk about in front of my children. I've been very honest with them about my journey, especially with my daughter, who's older and understands these concepts. Um, but still, like I would like some things I wouldn't say. So I still enjoy having time on my own, but I don't need it. I don't need it to fill my cup. And I
Mm.
think that's a shift that we're moving into, and it's impossible, or like maybe not impossible, but really hard to see that, or even maybe believe that when you're not there, when everything is a drag. But the true reason for that is that we're just not happy within ourselves, or not all the time. We're not like we haven't moved into our heart to really live from there.
Hmm.
And children just show that to us much more than if we didn't have children. It's much easier to avoid that truth when we don't have children because we can distract ourselves with tasks, and no one instantly gives us a negative response in a way that children would. But yeah, I agree with you. It's like it's really important to become aware of how we're feeling. And I think there's maybe two core practices that we can do, and that we can use different tools to do them. One is to just learn to feel whatever arises with it and without resisting it. Anything we resist persists. Anything we resist will stay to us. So we are like saying, I'm so afraid of that. I don't want that. And so the universe is like, oh, okay, more of that. And so we need to learn to just be with what is without being in the head about it, without judging ourselves, without justifying it, saying, of course, anyone would feel that way, like without feeling like a victim, without thinking about it, ruminating, or thinking, okay, where does this come from? Like, all these things that can be helpful to think, okay, like the context, how did I get there? But to just learn to be with whatever is. That's one practice. And the other thing we can learn is to step into love, to choose to be in the heart. Like we can do that through breath work, like breathing exercises, through like taking deep breaths and imagining positive emotions or deciding to feel positive emotions. Yeah, there's different ways we can do these things, but those are the two core things. And then eventually we'll shift into a state where we just are in love. And
Hmm.
then I think that is the thing that in a lot of healing modalities or a lot of ways we look at things currently, we don't see that that is actually a state we can move into. And that doesn't mean that then everything is just bliss and we have no more challenges. We still have challenges because as a soul, we are here to learn things. But the challenges become much lighter, or the quality of how we work through them just changes. There's a joy to it. And that's a fundamental shift. So to me, that is basically the way I look at it is we literally move into a different world and we leave this old world and this old way of being behind. Or it's like if you're in a more spiritual analogy, it's like moving from hell to heaven.
Mm.
And I think a lot of us, I mean, a lot of people are completely asleep and are just like the victims of their lives and don't see that they're creating things and that they're perfect exactly the way they are, and they just run through the mill of doing their lives. And I think a lot of us who are waking up are in this in-betweeny state. That's almost worse because you know you're creating it and then you still keep creating it. And so there it's like this back and forth, flipping back and forth between heaven and hell. And it's the closer you get to actually stepping into heaven and staying there, the more painful things become. And this is like for the soul, maybe one of the most painful stages to be in. And it seems like, well, this is just where I'm going to be. This is just what life is. I have one challenge after the next and work through all this pain, and it's going to be an endless rat hole. But eventually we make the jump, and then we're truly on the other side. So it's really a different world, a different dimension.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And heaven is absolutely a state that we could bring here now at any moment. And I like to also think of heaven as kind of a feeling of home. It's like coming back home to ourselves,
Hmm.
right? Like the truth of who we are. And, there's a forgetting process when we come into these bodies, but I think we give ourselves these challenge to help awaken up to the fact that we've always been home. We never really left, even though we're in a different dimension, we're in a different realm, we can still feel that peace and home inside of our hearts. And you make me reflect too, because this idea I have of like, oh, I just need time to myself. I could understand why somebody would think like, how can you feel at peace when you're with your little ones all the time, or how is that possible? But if you truly are in, like, I could totally see it. If you truly have your cup full all the time, it's never being depleted. You're constantly in a state of love and openness. You find those moments to be home while being with your children, and also reminding them that they can be home too, no
Hmm.
matter no matter where you
you
are.
you just are home in any
Yeah.
moment. You don't even have to
Yeah.
find it. And it's like once you're like, and I can say that for myself, like now that I'm in the state, and my partner always has been and has just waited for me. And
Mm.
I mean that's a whole different story. Like that has had negative effects on him too. Um, uh, but our children are also just happy. They
Hmm.
genuinely are. It's a completely different quality of life. Like our children don't have meltdowns. They're happy, and they're like things that would in the past upset them just don't upset them, and they're like completely free to express themselves when they want something. They'll say it. They're not um, easy in the sense of like they just obey everything. But also when you're in the state, you kind of have to shift how you relate to your children. Like we can't control our children. Our children are independent souls, and they come here for their own purpose, for their own reasons. And in our culture, we're obsessed with controlling children. And that's actually regardless of what parenting approach people use. It's like this constant, like, we micromanage their days, like we micromanage every moment. We tell them what they have to say, how they have to say it, when they have to have a bath, when they have to eat, what they have to eat, how much they can eat, what they say. Like when we start paying attention, we constantly control our children or redirect things or want it to go our way, even if we include them in things like cooking or whatever, and then we tell them how to do everything differently. Uh, that is that cannot be a loving approach, because we do that from our own fear. We are closed down, we're restricted. We think if they don't have a bath, something horrendous will happen, whatever that might be, whatever our ego tells us. Once we start to think about it, it's like, yeah, actually, I guess it's not that dramatic. So
They
I
go to
think,
bed dirty. It's okay.
yeah. And to let go of control doesn't mean that they'll do whatever they want and we just put our hands up in the air. When we're actually connected and in love, they'll happily do the things that we want them to do because they look up to us. And then again, from an evolutionary perspective, makes perfect sense because they could be born anywhere into the world at any time in history. And they have no reference point. They don't know what are the customs here and what are things like. And so they look to us to make sense of the world and how to be a competent member of their cultural group. So of course they want to follow our lead,
Hmm.
but only if they feel connected to us and loved by us. And children
Hmm.
resist because we constantly try to control them, not from love, but from fear.
Yeah. I'm thinking of an example when you're sharing this. Since young age, as soon as she could help or want to, I always invited Luciana to help with whatever I'm doing, every area of my life. I feel like I've included her. And one of the examples I could think of is when I'm folding laundry. I always invited her, and you know what folding laundry for Luciana has looked like and still does, is unfolding the laundry that I'm folding. But I let her, and it's okay. And I can understand why a lot of parents would resist that or try to control because it's like it's takes longer. If you're doing all this laundry that your child's undoing, it's like that can be irritating. But I just laugh at it because she's learning and she's experimenting and like, I've obviously when she's a little bit older, I'll teach her how to fold, but at the same time, I'm not trying to control how she's helping. Like in her mind, that's helping
Hmm.
mama. She's just doing whatever I'm doing and playing with the laundry basket. Sometimes she goes in it, but it's like she's just having fun. And that's the most important thing for a child. And so anytime that I say, "You want to help with laundry?" she gets so excited and she comes to me, come in the laundry room and like, "You know what? So what? It takes a little bit longer. That's okay." I've been cultivating a
Yeah.
lot of patience as a new mom, but I'm learning a lot about control too because that's been one of the things growing up for me. And so it really takes taking a step back and kind of looking at the areas where maybe you are controlling and then trying to understand how could you approach it differently, giving them a little bit more space to maybe show you and teach you something. Yeah, I'd love to go into a little bit of the work that you're doing, Anita. When did you create Growing Up Connected, and do you want to just share a little bit about it?
Sure. When did I get started? I think I started at 2023. Um, yeah, and I basically I run workshops and I've been working with parents one on one. And yeah, like bridging really an evolutionary perspective, like understanding child development through an evolutionary lens and also through a trauma-informed lens, like both how we are traumatizing our children or how we continue to unconsciously pass our trauma onto our children despite our best intentions to not do so. and also how we have been traumatized and how that keeps us from seeing um, how we're passing our trauma on. That's like the main, I think, focus. And to me, what is really important is to come from love and from compassion, and to not blame anybody, but to see like both to be completely compassionate and understanding and loving, and never hold anything anyone does against them, because no one will ever be willing to look at themselves when they feel judged.
Of course.
And I also think it's just wrong to be judged or to judge. Um, and the other thing is to look at the truth, to not sugarcoat things or pretend it is not so, because it's hard. So there's a lot of, I think, ideas like as an at yelling, if we want to go back to that example, is a good one. It's like this idea: if we tell parents that yelling traumatizes their children or harms them and can have long-term consequences, that is so unethical and so mean, because parents are
Mm.
already so overwhelmed and it's so hard to parent. How could we possibly put that on them? And that idea may come from a compassionate stance of we can't make it harder for parents. But it's a terrible, the reasoning is terrible, because then we keep everyone stuck. Parents will continue to be unhappy. They confirm for themselves this victim role. There's nothing I can do. This is just too hard. And they pass their trauma on to their children. So we like, it's like this, I think, this mixing up of, if we say you are the cause for your child's misery, then you are to be blamed. But those two don't have to go together. But it's just we do in our moralizing mind, and we put them together. So, yes, you may be the cause, but it's not your fault. That doesn't make
Hmm.
you a bad person. That doesn't say anything about you as a person. Um, but if you want to change it, we have to look at the truth. We can
Yeah.
only ever change anything if we look at the truth.
Hmm. Hmm.
So those are like kind of, yeah, I think that's my main approach. And I think there's a lot of things in the gentle parenting world that is unhelpful, that perpetuates the trauma. There's a lot of improvement, and I think a lot of things in gentle parenting is a lot better than an authoritarian approach. Like, we try to be kinder, but there's a lot of things that we do where we inadvertently perpetuate the trauma. Like, for example, also something like, we validate children's emotions, but we hold firm boundaries. Now, like an example that I love to use is like, if I said to you, "Oh, hey Julia," or if you said to me, "Hey Anita, let's have pizza tonight," and I say, "Ooh, pizza, that sounds great, but tonight is not the night for pizza," and then you say, "Oh man, I really want pizza. You know what? I have the time to get the ingredients, and I'll make it. I'll have pizza, and you're welcome to join me, or you can eat something else." And I say, "Ah, Julia, I hear you. You really want pizza. Maybe we can make pizza in the next few days. We're not making pizza today." And we're just friends. And then you get mad and say, No, this is my decision. I'm going to get pizza. I pay for it. I make it. I'm going to make pizza." And I say, "Oh, I hear you. You know what? Or you get mad at me, and I say, I hear you, Julia. It's okay to get mad, but we're not going to have pizza." Would you be like, "Okay, cool, I really feel hurt that you validated my emotions here and were really compassionate"? Or would you say, "Well, fuck you. I want to have pizza. You're the one that is stopping me." And it seems a little hypocritical that now you're so understanding and compassionate to allow me to be mad about the very thing that you don't let me do. And that is what we constantly do with children. And of course, there may be situations where we have to draw a boundary. So let's say if I'm on the plane with my 2-year-old, and that 2-year-old is running up and down the aisle, and the plane wants to take off, and we have to sit them down. Well, that's out of my control. I kind of have to enforce that, no matter whether my child will like it or not. Still, the energy that I bring will have a big effect on how they'll take it. But so often we hold a boundary that we think is necessary, and we don't pause to think, why do I think this boundary is necessary? It's just an unspoken assumption that, of course, we have to set boundaries. And so we violate children's autonomy, and freedom so often. And when you think about it from the perspective of a soul who's here to be free, to express themselves, to be in love, how insulting that is.
Mm,
And yeah, so that's one, I think, of the things that I think gentle parenting like takes like the wrong approach. And in doing that, we cannot come from a place of love. When we I mean, we can come from love when we set a boundary, but when we constantly set boundaries, that
mm,
is not necessary. Like most of the time, they come from a place of fear. When we come from fear, we don't come from love, and that means it's by definition disconnecting. So that means our children feel unloved, and when they feel unloved, that is to like the way I would, if I had to summarize trauma in one sentence, I would say trauma is our response to not feeling loved. And
mm.
so we do that so much more to children than we realize. Even if we're present and if we try to be compassionate, we make a choice over their heads about them from a place of fear. And so that's on us to look at, why do I have this fear? And is this fear really true? And can I free myself from that? Again, this is not to say then they do whatever they want and we let them just do anything, because that could also come from fear, that we just step back and like, okay, you do whatever you want. I don't say anything because I'm afraid. I don't know, I might be too controlling or whatever. Like we have to genuinely look at what does my heart say? What do I authentically think here? And why do I have this fear?
Yeah, there's a fine balance there, especially when it's
Yeah.
considering their safety and what have you. So it's being discerning, I think, as a parent, and really
Yeah.
tuning into the needs of your child, which may look different from your needs, right? I think a lot of the time we assume and project our own needs onto our children, but they are their, like you said, their own unique individuals, and so they may be completely different than yours.
I mean, I would say we all have the same needs from an evolutionary perspective. We
Basic needs.
all have two needs, like besides like obviously like needing food and shelter and whatnot. I think that the two true needs we have is a need for safety, which I would break down as physical and emotional closeness, and a need for autonomy, like which is freedom, that we can do whatever we
Hmm.
want. And both of these needs, ultimately, what they mean is we need to feel loved. We need love. That's it. And that's true of us, and that's true of our children. And then the different things that we do, how we fill our days, that may vary, but it all comes down to
Yeah.
the basic thing that we all want and need is love.
But don't you think that like receiving that need can look in different ways, like the way people receive love or feel love?
I think it may look different to some extent, but I think so. For example, not wanting a lot of physical touch or like not expressing emotions freely is a form of trauma. I think, and then when you look at other hunter-gatherer groups or like more traditional groups, you see that people just are much more touchy,
Hmm.
like physical closeness is an essential, integral part of being vulnerable, of being intimate. And I don't necessarily mean sexually intimate. I just mean feeling close to people, feeling like open-hearted and giving and receiving that love. And so a lot of people say, well, I'm just not. And I used to feel the same way, like not a very touchy person. But that's like the fear of having this, letting this closeness in because we were burnt as children
Mm.
or hurt. So we are ultimately, another way to look at things, I think, is the way to look at trauma is our fear ultimately is a fear of love. We learn to be afraid of opening ourselves up. We learn to be afraid of love. So
So
and that
ironic.
yeah, so ultimately I think that's what we all want. And so it doesn't look as different as we think it does. Or same when a child wants space, when a child is upset and wants space, that's not what their true nature wants. What their true nature wants is love, is closeness. But they've been
Hmm.
burned so much that then, or they've been modeled by others. Oh, you're upset. Okay, like when you are upset, then what you need is space. And we're going to give that child some space here. But
Mm.
inside, they're hurting. They feel more alone. Now, that doesn't mean that if now we suddenly come and give them lots of closeness and love, that they'll be embracing and say, oh, great, finally, you're giving that to me. They might push us away and reject that love. But that comes from hurt, from pain, not from genuinely needing
Yeah.
space. So
Yeah.
we'd have to work through that and gain their trust that they are willing in the moment to come and allow our love.
Yeah, no, I feel like there's a lot to reflect on there and there's a lot of deep insights. I want to also, before we end, I want to talk about the book that you are writing in the final stage of editing. So The Portal, I had the draft and I had a chance to kind of glance through it. And I just want to say, Anita, wow, there's so much depth, there's so much heart there. And you have a really unique blend of like academic psychology and spiritual perspectives, and you write in a very articulate, beautiful way. And I'm really excited to, for this book to get out and for people to be able to read it and explore it further. And we spoke about today too how like perhaps we are the cause of our child's pains, but like it's such a vulnerable realization, and we don't really need to go into the shame and the blame, but just knowing that like we have the ability to change that. And so like for these traumas that you speak about, do you think all of them are reversible or I don't know if healable is a word.
Um, yeah, I definitely think they are. And I think has been happening for me, and it has also happened for my daughter. Like I've seen a lot of the issues that are so common in children nowadays. I've also seen and I also seen develop some typical mental health issues that are completely gone now. And I think it makes sense both from a neuroscientific perspective or biological perspective and from a spiritual perspective that they can be completely reversed. Like from a neuroscientific perspective, it's any wiring that we have can be unwired and rewired and changed. So the brain is plastic, everything is plastic, and we constantly build new neural connections based on what we put our attention on, which is why, for example, it's so important to just step into love and to practice feeling positive emotions. So that's one perspective. And the other is like from a spiritual perspective, we come here precisely to learn the lessons that we're learning. So anything anyone is struggling with is what they chose as a soul to struggle with. So our children, if they're with us, and if we are currently, anyone who may be listening to this is currently hurting their child chose this and knew this very well coming in as a soul that this is what was going to happen. And so you have the opportunity to heal it together and to evolve as a soul and to move through it. And then from a maybe a lens further away, like zooming out, kind of, as souls or as God, as the one creator that we all ultimately are, we are already whole and perfect. There's no healing needed because we're already whole. So healing just means
Mhm.
becoming whole again.
Mhm.
But we already are, so we just have to remember. So from that perspective too, or from a spiritual perspective, trauma, the way we talk about it, and the way this book has two parts, kind of the way I really lay it out in the first part of the book, doesn't actually exist. It's just a story that we tell ourselves and that we believe. So we can also look at it through that lens. All that exists ultimately is love. So fear or anything, all there exists is God or is the divine consciousness. And fear or hell or the opposite of that is just an imagination, an experience that we create so that the creator can create itself. But ultimately, it's not true. Like as the A Course in Miracles, I don't know if you're familiar with that, says is
Mhm.
nothing unreal can exist. There's only one real thing. So we're creating these experiences and suffering in them. So we can just remember that and stop suffering. And of course,
Mhm.
it's a journey, and it's meant to be a journey. It's maybe not that easy to do that. But that's the ultimate truth. Everything is already okay exactly as it is. And I think that might also help us like relax and breathe into that. And then we can take joy in that journey and take it as an invitation also from our children. So I felt so much guilt for the ways I've hurt my daughter. But ultimately, the way I think that is more helpful to look at is she has come here and really shown me the pain that I've been putting on her and shown a light on that. And in that, also showing me the pain that I've carried in myself that I've been unwilling to look at. So she's given me the
Mhm.
greatest gift to free myself from it and for me to live a happy life just for myself, to feel the love that I have for myself or the love that I am. And in doing that, I have transformed myself and continue to transform myself into a mother that she truly feels loved by, where she can be fully free and actually grow up free from trauma or largely free from trauma. And so it's like this, I think this karmic bond that we have that we've been working out. That is like to the benefit of us all. So there are no victims. Like she's not a
Mhm.
victim of me.
Mhm.
We're all in this together and helping each other and growing together.
Yeah, really beautifully said, Anita. Very, very deep perspectives. And it really is about shifting the story, and really telling yourself a story that you'd like living, that you'd want to
Hmm.
be living, and knowing that you are the writer of your life story and that you can in any moment. And it may take some practice, absolutely, especially after, living I don't want to say an untrue, like maybe a less aligned life than we otherwise would and want to. And so I think the biggest thing, like when people are living in fear, they're probably not focusing on things that they're grateful for each day or like the things that are actually nice in their life. And when you think about it, there's always something, to be grateful for. And so I think the biggest thing for shifting your focus is really starting to consciously think about things that make you feel good and things that you love about your relationship with your children or things that you love about yourself and your life. And shifting that focus will naturally just bring you more into a state of love. And the longer that you can stay there, the longer that you can be that love, and it will transform your life. But it does take work, and it does take letting go and practice. And it's like a fine line of, controlling the things that you can, but at the same time letting go of control. It's really that fine balance. And we're going through it at the exact, speed that we need to. And if the only way that we suffer, I believe, is when we don't fully accept whatever's going on in our lives and in ourselves. And
Hmm.
so when we can just be with what is, we do not suffer when we accept and know that like we're going to be in it as long as we need to, but we can also be out of it anytime we choose.
Yeah.
you know there's a part of your book where you have a section that's called repair is not enough. Do you want to share a little bit more about what that means?
Sure. So there's this idea in gentle parenting again that we all screw up, which of course we do. Like we all make mistakes and hurt our children. And that as long as we repair the rupture that we create, it's okay. So this is actually based on a study from, I believe, 1953 or sometimes in the 50s, by a psychologist, finding that when there's small misattunements between the mother and the child, and I don't want to butcher the statistics now, but I believe so 70% of the time there will be misattunements between mother and child. So the child smiles at the mother and the mother doesn't respond with a smile because she is not present to it or whatever.
Hmm.
And in 70%, also 70% of the time, those get repaired within 2 seconds. By repair means they then match they become reattuned to each other. So these may be like verbal things, like facial expressions, behavioral things. And this study is, and then similar studies that have been done since, are basically the basis for claiming that as long as we repair a rupture, it's okay. And in fact, repairs are good because ruptures are good because they teach a child to become resilient. And this is based on the idea, like when we look at attachment styles, that even securely attached children have ruptures with their parents, and lo and behold, they are securely attached. So it's clearly okay. So there's several issues I would take with that. Um, the claims, like, first of all, I wouldn't even agree that these original studies show that there's no harm, even in small attunements. But let's put that aside and say, okay, fine. But those were repaired within 2 seconds, and those were these small, minor things of, I look at you, you don't look back at me with an infant. Now, I'll give you an extreme example to make that obvious. If a parent beats their child, 70% of the time the child misbehaves or does something that triggers the parent in some form, but then most of the time repairs and apologizes for beating the child. Do you think that would have a negative effect on the child, or would that then be okay because the rupture was repaired? Right? It's like obvious. It would
Hmm.
still have a negative effect on the
For
child.
sure. Well, absolutely.
And so when we constantly yell or we're constantly like cold or stressed and annoyed and do things that really hurt our children, that really hurts them in their part, that the person that they depend upon the most constantly does these things, it's like, why would anyone that loves me would do that? And if you think about that with your partner, if your partner, like, say, constantly cheats on you or does something that you just find really hurtful, and then always apologizes or often apologizes and repairs the rupture, wouldn't you still be like, And I mean, I've done that to my partner. I've hurt him a lot. So, in various ways, like been really mean and cold-hearted to him. Doesn't it at some point, so I'm not saying not to blame anyone, but just wouldn't you then also at some point be like, why does the person that loves me hurt me all the time? And for our children, it's different because they're dependent on us. Like we can leave our partner, but our children rely on us literally to survive.
Mm.
So to assume that ruptures, as long as we repair them, have no negative consequences, to me is just a wild idea. And we just need to look at the state of the world and how we are all injecting our pain onto everyone else. And we can see that in children today that are still being traumatized and they're constantly like being aggressive to other kids, getting upset, don't want to share, do all these little things where they're just expressing the hurt they actually have in a relationship with their caregivers and put it on someone else that they can.
Or they're just shut down completely.
Or that, yeah.
Yeah.
Or like people pleasers that are super friendly, but it's fake. Like if someone is always nice, a child, and doesn't feel comfortable to say no, you can rest assured that they carry anger and that they have pain that they just are too afraid to show.
Mhm.
Um, so so that's the one thing. Then the other thing is with secure attachment. In my view, like we treat secure attachment as the golden standard, right? There's these different forms of attachment styles, like four. Like you can break them down like briefly as just secure attachment and different forms of insecure attachment. But secure attachment is like we looked at children and their behaviors. It's just the ones that are least traumatized. We assume that they are the ones that aren't traumatized, that they are the ones that are thriving, but it's just relative to the other children. We don't know actually what an attachment style would look like of a child that grows up with a completely open heart, that feels in every moment of their life unconditionally loved and like they're welcome no matter like their parents never get frustrated with them no matter what. That doesn't mean that their parents don't sometimes redirect their behavior or teach them something, but they're just always welcome. The parents never feel overwhelmed or this is such a burden or stress. There's this just underlying okayness of existence that they feel.
Mm.
What might those children look like? So you can look at some reports, and I actually have a quote in a book from someone from another book describing meeting like a child from a tribe, and to me that sounds like that would be like attachment style that's on a whole different level, much closer to what I'm suggesting here. But yeah, getting back to this point of repair. So with that, we assume that, okay, in the secure attachment, there were some ruptures in the original studies. And look, those children still have secure attachment. But I would say, yeah, they are also traumatized. So we can't conclude then that creating ruptures, but repairing them has no ill effects. Now, that's not to say that anyone should feel shame. And this is actually the motivation why there was a researcher, and I believe it was Winnicott, that termed this coin of the good enough mother. We just need to be good enough. That's also something that's referenced a lot. The whole motivation behind that was to not shame mothers more that were already overwhelmed. And that's not my goal either. And I think while you are in that state of overwhelm, yeah, it makes sense. And obviously, it's good to repair ruptures when they happen, and ruptures will happen, especially as we're learning to heal ourselves. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. But we have to see the truth. The truth is that it has consequences. Every cause creates an effect, and it hurts our children. And we can undo that, and it's hard to do that all at once. Like once we come to grips with that and see that, we will continue, most likely, I certainly have, to create harm and create ruptures. And then it's good to repair them. But we need to see that we can get to a place where we don't actually create ruptures. And a
Mm.
rupture to me is anytime we close our heart.
Mm.
Now, we can do sometimes things that our children don't like, but when we have an open heart, then they will feel that, and then it's not an actual rupture.
Mm. Yeah, it feels like we're heading on a road to self-mastery by really like embodying that example for our children. And I would love to meet that child from that tribe and just see the differences. It sounds like we're, really shifting into an awakened area. And to me, that's what that would look like really everyone being heaven on earth, together,
Mhm.
and being examples for one another and knowing that it is possible. It's not just some fantasy, but we are headed there right now. And it starts in here and in here as well, right? Believing that it's possible and then being it and being
Mhm.
open to it in every moment. and it's a journey. It's a
Definitely.
journey, right? Yeah, this is so beautiful, Anita. If people who are listening to this down the road and eventually when the book is available, where will they be able to find it?
Um, uh, I'll like it'll be published first on Amazon. I think like to find out about it when it will be published, I think it'll be early this summer. They could subscribe. I have a newsletter on growingupconnected.com, so I'll definitely announce it there. So that might be the easiest way to find it.
And also, when it's eventually available, I can update the link and even have the direct link to purchase on the show description, and so people will be able to easily find it
Oh,
because I think
perfect.
many
That
people will
might be
probably
easier.
be interested. I know I am. This is I feel like we can continue this conversation for hours. This has been incredible. I know though we do have children to get back to and families. I would love to ask if there's anything else you would like to add. If we'll actually love to end usually episodes with this one question. You know, if a megaphone were to drop in front of you right now and you were speaking to the whole entire world, what would you share with them?
Ooh.
You can take a moment. It's a big question.
Yeah. I feel, I would love to not say anything at all and just reflect it all for being. I think love,
Mm.
like when we are in a state of love, then that just says more than any word could say. If I had to say a sentence, I would say everything is already okay. You're perfect exactly as you are.
Mm.
And maybe lighten up. We don't take it so seriously.
I love that. No, nobody, I don't think nobody's ever said that before about not saying anything. That's and really just reflecting back. Yeah, that's really beautiful, Anita. Oh, I love that. Is there anything else that you would love to share that you feel is on your heart before we close off here?
Um, I think maybe just I've said that, but I think it's so important. It's uh, no one, no matter how much they're struggling, no matter how terribly they may have acted, no one is a bad person. And
Mhm.
no one needs to feel shame. Like feeling shame or beating down on ourselves is a form of self-harm. We're not showing up in love. The love that we want to show to our children is the love that we also can show to ourselves or deserve just as much as anyone else. So I think it's important to forgive ourselves, and I don't think we actually need to forgive ourselves. There's no forgiveness needed, but
Needed.
just as like it's all okay. And no matter where in your journey you are a perfect soul worthy of love. You are love, and everything is perfectly okay as it is. And everyone can make this shift.
Yeah.
Everyone, no matter where anyone is, everyone can move to a state of love. And if you continue to work on that, or if you're devoted to get there, the outcome is inevitable. It may take some time, but everyone can get there, no matter the circumstances.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that beautiful truth and reminder. Yeah, I absolutely agree that everyone, not even just talking about parents, but everyone is always doing the best that they can, with the tools that they have, even if it doesn't feel like their best, like you are, and it can always get better. And I think just accepting where you're at and realizing that the ancestors are cheering us on.
That's true.
This conversation has been so beautiful, all that you're embodying and reminding us is to come back to the love that we are,
Hmm.
the love that's all around us and never left us, even if the clouds are in the way, it's there if we're willing to see it. And yeah, I'm just really grateful for you sharing your story, the beautiful work and, experiences of your family and your life. And, for everyone listening, I will have all of Anita's, ways to connect with her, growing up connected, all the links in the show notes below so that you can easily find her. And if you're interested at the workshops are probably just locally that you're doing right now, eh?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
mainly, yeah. I've been thinking about doing some online, but I haven't so far. I might
Okay,
at some
well,
point.
follow her newsletter if you're looking for that in the future. But right now you're in Comox Valley on Vancouver Island. So
Yeah,
if
that's
anyone
right.
listening is from there, check it out. And yeah, thank you just so much for being here and making the time for this conversation. And it truly is how we change the family by sharing how we change the world by sharing these conversations and talking about these matters because it's
Mhm.
so important. So
Sure.
thank
Thanks so
you.
much for having me. It was fun to talk to you.
Maybe they'll be around too one day.
Yeah, it would be great.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been a true honor just listening to you, and you've even, helped to open up parts of me and reflect on certain things. So I'm just very grateful, Anita. Thank you.
Thank you
I'm going
too.
to invite a little video of Luciana saying farewell. It's kind of end of season here as there's still snow in the video, but it's all melted now outside. But I'm going to share it anyways, and I'll see you on the other side, okay?
Okay,
Thank you so much.
thanks.
For watching.
Thank you, Roxton.
Say have a great day.
Have a great day.
I love you.
I love you.
See you soon.
Soon.
Hey, bye. Nacho.